It is outrage. Look, people lose close elections. Hillary Clinton lost a close elections. Other people have lost close elections. And what you do in America historically is you say, hey, I fought as hard as I could. I want to thank my supporters. I congratulate the winner. Let's go forward with the transition we all love in our country, and we want the best for America. What he is doing right now is delegitimizing our electoral process and American democracy. What he is saying to his supporters is, we really didn't lose the election. Yeah, maybe the other guy got 5 million more votes than we did nationally. We really didn't lose it. It's fraud, fraud, fraud. And millions of people are going to believe that. That is an outrage. You got to have the guts to sometimes say, you know what, I put up a fight. I lost. Congratulations to the winner. Let's go on. It's not that I have not seen. Nobody has ever seen this. This really is an outrage. And this is why I work so hard. The progressive community worked so hard in this election. Because what we knew this campaign, this election was about, it's not just climate change or criminal justice reform or the economy. It is whether or not we continue to have a president in Donald Trump who is a pathological liar, who really is trying to move this country beyond the rule of law. And that is something that we cannot accept. And thank God we were able to defeat him. Look, absolutely. The average Republican senator is not an idiot. They understand that, that Trump has lost. But one of the other things that we should all be nervous about and fearful about is the degree to which Trump intimidates and scares the hell out of Republican members of Congress. They are afraid to stand up to him. So you got a party, not of individuals, but almost a cult type party where members of the Senate who know better, not just on this issue, on many other issues, they'll come up to you privately and say, yeah, Trump's a little bit crazy. But, I think I would hope, I don't want to, the Republicans won't take my advice anyhow, I know that, but I would hope that they get the courage to stand up as individuals, represent their constituencies, and do not live in fear of Donald Trump. It's not a good thing.
So that was Bernie Sanders last night on CNN with Wolf Blitzer, absolutely roasting Donald Trump for his attack on American democracy, his disrespectful attitude towards the will of the people, and his unwillingness to accept the election results. But he doesn't just leave it at Trump, and I think this is really crucial here, because he, more than a lot of Democrats, has connected Trump to the Republican Party. That was one of the main flaws of the Biden strategy. Look, Biden ended up getting a ton of votes more than Donald Trump. Biden, to his credit, is going to beat Trump by well over 5 million votes. But one of the key flaws of the Biden Democratic Party campaign is that in focusing just on how Donald Trump is bad, and Donald Trump is bad, they let down ballot Republicans off the hook, even though Donald Trump would have never happened and could have never done many of the bad things he's done without the implicit and explicit support and tolerance of the Republican Party. Whether it's senators, congressmen, officials, supporters, what have you, Trump without his party is just one man. A bad man, but just one man. And Bernie notes here that, in this moment, yes, Donald Trump was a dangerous threat to democracy. But you have Republicans in the Senate, his colleagues, the 52 or so Republicans in the Senate right now, almost none of which are willing to stand up to Donald Trump. They know better. These senators know better. They are not rookie Congress people. They are not, people on the Trump train on social media. These are, in many cases, long-serving, seasoned veterans of politics. Some of them are very, very highly accomplished lawyers and legal scholars in their own right, and they know better. And they know that what Donald Trump is doing is an attack on the American people and their democracy, and they're afraid to say anything about it because the Republican Party is still very much Donald Trump's party, and they don't want to look like they're betraying Donald Trump by supporting the will of the American people. Bernie's not asking them to to stand up to Trump before the election. Bernie is simply asking them to say, look, Mr. President, you got less popular vote and less electoral college votes. The race isn't all that close. Like, at the end of the day, he won those swing states by a bigger margin than Trump did over Hillary 4 years ago, and it's time to accept the results. And so this is crucial, because if you are going to convince the American people to elect those 2 Georgia Democratic senators over Republicans, you have to make it known to the people of Georgia that voted for Biden more than Trump that without Republican tolerance of Trump's worst impulses, we wouldn't be in nearly as much of a mess as we are right now. And that's the lesson Democrats have to put forward. But I also really liked this interview because Bernie also noted his positive desire. There's been a lot of talk about Biden's cabinet, and Bernie has made it clear here, one of the first times he's made it clear in his own voice, that he wants to be labor secretary. I'm going to play you that clip.
Well, this is what I think. As you know, Wolf, early on in the campaign, members of the Biden team and my team sat down on some of the major issues facing our country, the economy, healthcare, education, climate, etc., to see how we can work together to come up with proposals that, neither side necessarily agreed with, but which made sense for the American people, especially the working families of our country today who are suffering more than probably at any time since the Great Depression. And we hammered out agreement. So if your question is, do I expect that the Biden administration will do everything that Bernie Sanders believes? No, I don't. But do I expect that they will come forward and keep their word in maintaining and legislating on the proposals which we agree to? Yes, I do. And some of those proposals are very, very significant. It means expanding health care to all Americans. It means lowering the Medicare age from 65 to 60. It means raising the minimum wage to at least $15 an hour. It means making it easier for workers to form unions, equal pay for equal work, investing $2 trillion in combating climate change and creating millions of jobs as we move away from fossil fuel to energy efficiency and sustainable energy. So would I have gone further? Yes. Are those significant proposals that will protect the needs of working families? Yes, they are. Well, what's true is I want to do everything I can to protect the working families of this country who are under tremendous duress right now. Whether that's in the Senate, whether that's in the Biden administration, who knows? Well, let's see how that unfolds. If I had a portfolio that allowed me to stand up and fight for working families, would I do it? Yes, I would.
So Bernie says that, from the time the primary's been over, he and Biden have worked together to try and craft policies that will work for working people. And of course, Bernie says, look, you're not going to get what you would get from me in a Bernie Sanders administration. And to me, that's a shame. I know it's a shame, but you live with the realities. Biden won the primary, unfortunately, and so he gets to drive the broad direction of the presidential, platform and the presidential policy vision. But Bernie is right in noting that there are still many opportunities to get things done. And I do think that while there would be some pitfalls in pulling Bernie out of the Senate and making him a person in cabinet, where, cabinet ministers have to be far less willing to criticize the government. When you're in cabinet, you have to be more of a team player than when you're an independent senator from Vermont, where you can sort of play outside the system. Bernie as labor secretary could have a lot of value. There is the issue that if you don't have enough votes in the Senate, you can't really pass labor reform. You can't really pass new laws that make it better for workers. For instance, Republican senators will likely block a $15 minimum wage. They'll likely block, policies that make it easier to join a union. But simply on the basis of law enforcement, of labor law enforcement, having somebody as labor secretary that is an unabashed champion of workers and unions would make a difference, because the law is one thing. The bills and acts are one thing. But enforcing those things or not enforcing them gives the actual department a lot of leeway. You can pass all the laws in the land. If the labor secretary hates workers and hates unions and basically starves the ability of the labor relations departments and, statutory law enforcement departments to actually make sure that employers on the ground are following those laws are worthless. They have to be enforced. Likewise, even mediocre laws, if they're enforced better, could improve working class people, their standard of living, could make their lives better. And that's something that Bernie Sanders as labor secretary could do. Now, I don't think it's going to happen, frankly. I don't think it's going to happen. I think there's a few reasons. One, there is a Republican governor in Vermont, and I know he has said that he would appoint a Democrat if, for whatever reason Bernie was put in the cabinet. He's made that promise, but I still think that Biden would be unwilling to let a Republican governor select a replacement for a left of center senator, especially if the Senate is going to be tied or razor thin. Like, I get that impulse. It's similarly why he might be reluctant to put Warren in cabinet. Of course, I know the biggest reason is that Bernie Sanders is too pro-worker, he's too pro-union, and even a lot of Democrats are like, we don't want somebody that powerful, that respected in that position who would actually fight too hard for workers, because that would make our very, very biggest donors, pretty angry at us. They might want things a little bit better for workers than the Republicans, but they don't want actually to have someone that fights for workers and means it. So I think that's something that is a bit of a barrier there. But I would be very interested to see what a Bernie Sanders Labor Department would be like, even though I'm very skeptical we're going to get it. A lot of people are suggesting that Marty Walsh, who's a Massachusetts politician, is maybe the favorite to take on that role because it doesn't have the Senate complications. He does have some support from unions as well. And finally, I want to underline that Bernie is not giving up his fight against the Democratic Party. And this is maybe one of the reasons why he'll never be in cabinet unless, the AOC becomes president in 2024 and she brings him in. The fact of the matter is Bernie is still standing with AOC and Rashida Tlaib and Ilhan Omar in criticizing the Democratic Party's attack on the left after the election. He wrote an opinion piece for USA Today last night. Bernie was very busy yesterday, talking about how, the Democratic Party is already trying to pin their Senate and their House defeats on the left when the opposite is true. I want to read you a couple excerpts from that piece. Notes here, where Bernie says, here are the facts. 112 co-sponsors of Medicare for All were on the ballot in November. All 112 of them won their races. 98 co-sponsors of the Green New Deal were on the ballot in November. Only one lost the election. It turns out that supporting universal health care during a pandemic and enacting major investments in renewable energy as we face the existential threat of our planet from climate change is not just good policy, it is also good politics. According to an exit poll from Fox News, no bastion of socialism, 72% of voters favored the change to, quote, a government-run healthcare plan, and 70% of voters supported, quote, increasing government spending on green and renewable energy. And so we've covered that information, that Fox News poll. We also covered, AOC's assertion that whether you're backing the Green New Deal or Medicare for All, those politicians who do win, and while a lot of those people are in blue districts, not all of them are, and we've looked at the information, every single Democrat in the House that lost did not support Medicare for All, whereas every swing district Democrat that did, and there were some like Katie Porter and others that did support Medicare for All, they won their seat again, and in some cases they increased their margin of victory from 2018 in the House. So there is room for many, many more Congresspeople to run on bold progressive policies, even in districts that lean Republican at least slightly. And Bernie continues here, saying that if you want to actually win and do something meaningful, like AOC has noted, you can't treat the base like an enemy. You have to embrace the broad working class base of the Democratic Party. And he notes here, the lesson is not to abandon popular policies like Medicare for All, a Green New Deal, living wage jobs, criminal justice reform, and universal childcare, but to enact an agenda that speaks to the economic desperation being felt by the working class. Black, white, Latino, Asian American, and Native American. People are hurting, and they are crying out for help. We must respond. And that's what AOC was saying yesterday. We covered this with Rashida Tlaib, saying, I will not be silent. I have a district of people that are struggling. They are overwhelmingly African American and Arab American. I am not going to tell the people that made Joe Biden president and that drove his victory to be silent. And so Bernie is saying the same here. So he is still one of the leaders on the left. I expect what you're going to see is Bernie will still be out there every day fighting, but he's also going to gradually be passing the torch to this next generation, as a good leader should. I don't think Bernie's going to be in cabinet, but as long as Bernie will call out the hypocrisies and the callousness and the anti-democratic behavior of both Republicans right now especially, but also Democrats when they fail, he will continue to be one of the most influential people in American politics. And we're luckier for that.